Welcome to a very special Purple Rock Survivor podcast. We are doing a new summer series, the Survivor Watch Along. For me, watching the final season of Survivor that I have not seen. And for my guests, watching one of just 3 Survivor seasons they haven't seen. We've been covering for the past several weeks on the site episodes in groups of 3 at a time of Survivor Gabon. Tonight we're going to cover the finale, the reunion, and just general thoughts and questions from you guys about what we thought about the season. I am joined not by Andy, but by Matt and Mark. Mark, it's your very first time on the Purple Rock podcast. Say hi to everybody.
Hello, guys. Despite what some of you may think, I do exist.
And Matt, if you've been listening for long enough, you do know he exists.
I do exist.
As proven by the time you got to talk to Savage on a podcast.
That was pretty, yeah, we did that.
Still a career highlight for you?
Yeah, I'd say that was a lot of fun at the time.
At the time, in retrospect, not so much, huh?
I mean, the conversation was cool. Nothing wrong with the interview, right?
Right. And hey, we did get to confirm while Skyping with him based on his picture. He does have a very attractive wife.
He does. He was not lying about that part of his biography. Not that we thought he would.
Okay, so let's get to some Gabon talk. As I said, we've covered every episode of the season up until now. We actually skipped the recap episode, episode 10. All of those recaps, if you want to see them, are on purplerockpodcast.com. Go in there, read the comments, see our thoughts as we went along. I, for one, went into this with the attitude, I'm going to be just completely objective. I'm going to forget everything that I've heard, any negative reactions I've heard about this, and try to enjoy this. Just try to appreciate it. Is that how you guys came into this too?
Yeah, I think so. I did come in expecting this to be a bad season, and I think because of that, it kind of, I think it landed a little better than I was expecting.
Yeah, I had no real opinions. I mean, I kind of knew the ending, but other than that, I was just going into it cold, and I was impressed.
Yeah, we'll discuss how knowing the ending factored into our enjoyment of the show once we get to the end. As I mentioned, we are going to take some listener questions and audience suggestions for discussion topics. Some of them will be sprinkled in here. I'll shout you out if I answer your question. Some of them we're saving to the end because they didn't quite fit with our rundown of how we're going to cover the show. But let's start with one of Matt's favorite topics, Susie the Outsider. She's playing the game, but she's just kind of there.
Is she playing the game, though? I mean, okay. Before the finale starts, and when we see the scramble for the final 5 vote, and I say scramble loosely because I don't think people actually scramble in Gabon. It's more of a, mild shuffle, that people do around camp. The way they're talking about Susie, she's kind of Eric Reichenbach and Karamoan. She's the person that they just tell who to vote for right before the vote, and in this vote, we saw her like, hey, why hasn't anyone told me who to vote for yet?
Yes, and Maddie tells her, just vote with your heart on this one.
Right.
How is that not a clear signal? Hey, just so you know, maybe we're voting for you right here. That's why I'm not going to tell you where to vote, because it doesn't matter. Right.
Except they don't vote for her. So I imagine he came back to her at some point and was like, hey, your heart is telling you Kenny.
Yeah, when you searched your heart, did it say Kenny? Search again, just in case.
It's like a magic 8-ball in there.
Yeah, exactly. Shake it up, see if you get the better answer this time.
Right.
Susie, in this whole reunion episode, first of all, I should clarify, I'm not just trashing Susie. They're all really bad at this game. But Susie actually asks Bob if he thinks he'll get jury votes. What exactly is the purpose of that question?
Okay, a generous reading of that is that maybe she's trying to get Bob to admit that, yeah, Bob will get jury votes, that the other people there will see that he's a threat. The realistic reading is that Susie has no idea what's going on in the game, and she honestly doesn't know if Bob will get jury votes.
But does that do any of them, really?
So that's what I was going to get to. I think it was just as likely that when she asked Bob, he probably could have gone into a discussion of, I think I'm going to get this person's vote and this person's vote, because Bob is just as bad at this game. He just won.
Right. And one thing I was really surprised about with the actual finale, I did not realize that Susie got 3 votes. That kind of blew my mind.
Yeah, so I was watching with my wife. She was also aware that Bob wins, and we get to the vote count, and she's like, okay, Bob. And I think she said, oh, Susie's got one vote. Wow, she's like, I didn't even think Susie would get one vote. And then they start reading the votes. She's like, wow, Susie got 2 votes. Whoa, Susie got 3 votes. And obviously she knows the last vote can't be for Susie, but she's like, Susie got 3 votes? And Jeff Probst shared in that shock as he pointed out to Susie. He's like, not to be rude, but wow, I can't believe you got 3 votes.
Is there a way that actually can't be rude?
Well, I think even prefaced his question with, it's always going to sound rude this way, so there's really no way to say this, but how did you ever get to the end and get votes?
Well, that's Probst. That's Probst for you.
Yeah.
I mean, but is it like, okay, looking at this season, yes, taking into account all of Jeff Probst, biases and whatever, but how did Susie get 3 votes? And if the answer is just, she's not sugar, and, Bob also kinda stunk at this game, I think that tells you everything you need to know about Gabon.
I mean, I think if you bring 3 people to the end, one of them has to win. You can't vote for nobody. So, right. Someone's getting votes, and if you don't like Bob, it seems like nobody was ever going to vote for Sugar, except weirdly, potentially Randy? That was really unexpected.
No, I think Sugar had votes in play at the final. I actually think that the 3 votes that went to Susie, I honestly think she could have won those votes.
Well, when we get to the Sugar discussion, I want Mark, who is the closest thing we have to a Sugar defender, to come in and give us the ultimate Sugar defense.
I don't know if you're going to get that after this episode.
We actually did get a couple questions, though, that I wanted to discuss about Susie before we move on. Sharkules asked us, is this a better season if Susie wins? Mark, what do you think?
To that I would respond, was Co wrong a better season because Michelle won?
Ouch.
I mean, she won the final immunity, so I kind of see where she got a couple of votes because, she closed strong or whatever, but Sandra did it better.
What about you, Matt? Your opinion change at all if Susie wins this thing?
I think it's actually a worse season.
I don't know that it moves the needle at all for me. I mean, they're both bad. I think they both want the same amount of immunities. Bob won more challenges, but the more important thing is immunities, and I think he got 2. Susie also got 2. And
I thought I think he got 3.
Did he get 3? Either way, roughly similar in terms of immunity wins, roughly similar in terms of how terrible they are at the social and strategic game. I don't think it matters that much to me if Susie wins. Does it change anything at all? I think it's still a bad winner.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Susie might have been a little better strategically. She made one key strategic decision, which was she jumped at the second swap. That is the one thing she could hang her hat on. She jumped there, and that's all really she needed to do to hang around until Final 5. And then Final 5, Crystal and Kenny blew themselves up, and Susie could hang around till Final 4. And then she won the last immunity. Whereas Bob, I think, played a slightly better social game because I think people just liked him a little more. I think Susie may have irritated some people out there, but whereas Bob, I think got along with people a little easier, but I don't think he was playing the game there. I think that's just Bob. Bob did not actually engage the game in any way beyond the fact that he was good at a couple challenges for it.
And he occasionally was useful around camp.
Right, and he was useful.
So Kemper Boyd asks this question, or actually has this discussion topic, really. She wants us to discuss the fact that Susie is basically a bad Sandra who can't seal the deal. Mark sort of referenced this earlier. Do you think that's true, Mark? Do you think that Susie is just a, poor man's version of Sandra?
A really poor version, just because, I don't know, she fumbled her way through, and not having any say in anything is kind of worse than anyone but me, as a strategy.
Yeah, Bob also, we'll get to that in the reunion, or at the final tribal council, but Bob basically did the exact same thing. Bob was also a bad Sandra.
Yeah, they both were.
I see Bob as more of the poor man's Chris Daughtry, which probably makes Andy really sad that there is such a thing, but I think that's kind of what Bob is.
Yeah, I think Andy thinks that that's as low as you can go, so you somehow found a basement.
Mullets, bow ties,
Yeah.
same thing.
Sure. I don't know. I mean, I get that she sort of did the as long as it's not me thing once. I just, apart from being a Hispanic mom, I think that's kind of where the comparisons with Sandra end. She actually won immunities, which Sandra has never done, and she was socially incompetent, which is not true of Sandra.
Right, and the other thing is that, Sandra, she says her strategy is anything but me, but she actually is engaged in what's happening in the game, whereas Susie wasn't at all. The one move she makes is, the one time she's engaged, and then she checks out, and we have no idea, that she's paying attention the rest of the time. Whereas Sandra, even when she wasn't able to move the needle on certain votes, is always paying attention to what's happening.
People come to talk to Sandra.
Right, exactly, which is not what happens with Susie. They tell Susie what
Agreed.
to do.
All right, so let's instead talk about the person that was billed as the mastermind for this season, right up until the finale. Mark's hero, Mark's champion, Kenny. Kenny fell real hard here right at the end.
Yeah, agreed. Like, he just got so obsessed about that necklace deal. And sure, it might have been like playing to the jury, but I don't know. It just consumed his game in a way that kind of disappointed me from the rest of his performance in the season.
Yeah, I think Kenny to me had been the, for lack of a better term, strategic mastermind just by default, really.
Yeah.
So I was willing to call him the best player of the season because what were my other options at that point?
Because he was an actual player.
Right. I mean, I guess he tried sometimes, so that's something. But arguing in front of the jury that Bob should have sacrificed himself and given the necklace to Kenny so that Kenny could vote Bob out. Did you expect that you were going to get a lot of sympathy from the jury there? I mean, I get that he's trying to bury Bob as this person who broke a deal. But now that you've said, oh yeah, I really was going to vote you out, but you still should have done it anyway, I don't think you can play the sympathy card anymore.
And he kept going with it at Final Tribal Council too. I'm like, dude, just give it up.
You gotta let it go, as Elsa says. Matt, what did you think of Kenny?
I think what you're saying is accurate. Kenny was one of the few people on the season that actually really tried to play the game. Now, of course, part of trying is failure, which is why we say to never try. Right, that is our motto. But yeah, he got weirdly obsessed about that, and I still think his biggest mistake was
the Corinne vote.
Yeah, the Corinne vote. Thank you. Where if he expects them to play an idol there, which that's a bad read, but whatever, it's a bad read. You don't need to add your vote to theirs because that just singles you out as a target. If they play the idol, the 2 votes they cast will still knock out the person you want to knock out and get rid of the idol. And if it doesn't, then you don't expose yourself as colluding with them. Like, he basically is on tilt from the moment that he votes that way and it doesn't work out. And the rest of his game is him trying to make up for something, for a self-inflicted injury.
Yeah, and that's basically the very definition of a half measure. I mean, you either go all the way and you turn on Maddie and you take him out there, or you just say, all right, let Corinne play her idol. I know it's not me. It's going to be Maddie.
Right. And the funny thing is that Crystal had the right read there, and she basically said, what if Corinne doesn't have the idol? Should I vote Maddie?
Yep. And
when Crystal has the right read in this game.
Yeah. Pretty strategically inert final 6, I would say. Probably you could even up the numbers past that, but I'll just start with the final 6.
To be fair to Kenny, though, he was trying to read the intentions of a girl.
Yes, which, as we've seen, is something that he's not remotely skilled at. Right up including the reunion of this season. Speaking of, we got to see every player of this season because I actually sat through the Fallen Comrades / Parade of Losers, which I always fast forward through, but because this was supposed to be a watch along, I was like, I'm gonna suffer through this, I'm gonna watch it, see if there's anything to be gained. Instead, it totally validated my skipping it every single time. What about you guys?
It's never that bad.
I wrote down some snarky comments because that's who I am, like how Maddie started it off by saying they were all quality human beings. Were they, Maddie? This season, were they? I mean, come on, man. And then, just some other funny ones, just Ace remains just the worst. I mean, good lord, guy, you are terrible.
And it's impressive to be the worst in this cast, too.
But he is, right? I mean, Ace is terrible.
He's bad.
Yeah. Right. And then Sugar, of course, couldn't even get through this segment without crying.
Yeah, and that's to be expected. That's her thing. Mark, do you have anything to add about the loser parade?
I was just gonna say, I like them more than you guys. They don't have value, but at least they're entertaining. So, I didn't mind it.
Are they?
I like retrospectives. I have a warmer heart than you two, so.
Yeah. Well, that's a low bar.
I mean, I will say I do find them funny because it's always a good opportunity for people who are really terrible at the game to recast themselves as secret geniuses, but it's really obvious, so you kind of just start laughing when they do.
And that's why it's entertaining.
Yeah, that is the one benefit, is you get to laugh at how deluded they were.
They're contestants on a reality show. It's kind of the default.
Yeah, exactly. They're going to have this as the narrative of them in their head, so. But then, after the Parade of Losers, we get the Final Immunity Challenge, which Susie actually wins, and to her credit, plays it perfectly.
Yep. I was even saying earlier when we saw, both Corinne's collapse and then hers collapse, the first or second time, I was like, someone should just build to a certain point and just wait it out.
I mean, Sugar's collapsing, I'm assuming, because Corinne was not there.
Oh, that's what I meant. I'm sorry. Yeah, I meant Sugar. That was a weird mistake.
Yeah. I don't imagine too many people often conflate those two in their head. Yeah, and I had the same thought especially once he tells you there's a time limit, and once we hit the time limit, whoever has got the highest tower, she built up to, I think, 8 feet. Just sit there, and then unless somebody gets to 6.5 feet, don't touch anything. As long as yours is steady, just see if anybody can even come close.
Did anybody think that was a weird restriction though? Like a 30-minute time limit?
No, they've done it for another challenge in the past. I can't remember which one, but there's another building challenge they've done that was somewhat similar to this in the past, and there was the similar restriction just because without the time limit, they'd be going.
Yeah, I think Blood versus Water might have had a time limit when they had one of these challenges.
That might be it. And I think it's due to Palau indirectly. They don't want a challenge that could be endless anymore, especially on the final day. So I think they'll just build in a time limit if they have one that they don't think anyone will win.
Also,
outright.
Good on them for betting on these people to be incompetent. So.
Yeah, because let's be honest. Do you actually think any of them would have ever gotten to 10 feet? Maddie might have, because he was building his very slowly and very carefully, and it actually almost worked out for him, but because I think he was second at the end there. But no one else was getting to 10 feet.
I'm surprised that Bob didn't,
I do want to actually mention something about Bob here. Bob's an old guy who seems like he probably spends a lot of time, at home or in a log cabin, and he has to fill that time. How is he not good at building a house of cards?
I feel like every person over or age 60, which admittedly, he's not there yet, but he's on the way. I feel like every senior citizen knows how to do that, right? That's just some innate skill. Maybe it just happens when you become a grandparent. Maybe he's not a grandparent yet.
There wasn't a bridge competition.
If it had been Mahjong, he was gonna light it up. So Susie wins and Sugar cries because that's what Sugar does. But now we've got a situation where the person that we assumed was going home and everybody else had assumed would be voted out can't be voted out. So we're going to likely have Bob go home because Bob is the quote unquote big threat, which is hilarious. Then, because Sugar is Sugar, she cries and she decides, no, I love Maddie like a brother, and I love Bob like a father, and I've decided that Bob is more important to me now, so I'm going to let Bob get the tie and go for the fire making challenge. And Bob eats this up, immediately starts practicing the fire making challenge. Thus, Sugar decides the entire endgame, because of course she does.
I mean, let's be honest, Sugar's been deciding the entire endgame. From the moment that she organized the flip on Crystal and Kenny, this has been the Sugar show. And even before that, while, Kenny and Crystal might have been calling the shot, who was their third? It was Sugar. Like, she has been very much in the driver's seat the entire time. It's just now she decides to, she actually played a very good game this entire season, if that game was aimed at getting Bob.
Right, exactly. She is very good at winning Survivor, but not for herself.
Right, for Bob. Sugar is one of the best to ever play the game if the goal is to make someone else who's really terrible at this game
And really, she could have also just as easily done it for Maddie. I mean, let's just not assign all of her credit to helping Bob. She could have done it for Maddie too.
Yeah, she could have. And Maddie would have also won that final three. I think probably by a larger margin than Bob did.
So. So Mark, I mentioned earlier, you're the closest thing we have to a Sugar defender. Give us the Sugar defense here.
As much as I have to give credit to Kenny, nerd solidarity and all that thing, Sugar was, I don't know, I kept saying throughout the season that she was very much like Ty. She was very emotionally driven, but also kind of strategic, or at least falling backwards into strategy. And hey, no one ever wrote her name down, so you gotta give that to her.
Yeah, and I think you and Matt both made a good point, which is that she certainly controlled a lot of votes, or at least she was the power player in a lot of votes. Because it seemed like such like an arbitrary thing, it never seemed like there was some path in her mind or any sort of prior planning in her head. It was just, oh, I decided yesterday that Crystal's a bully, so now I have to vote her out. Or, I decided that Ace, who I've been aligned with since the start of the game, is not actually working in my best interests because I talked to Kenny for 30 seconds, so I'm voting him out. If those things are left out and her justifications are different, then yes, she's an actual power player. It seemed like Mark said, she just fell backwards into a quote-unquote strategy.
I think that's true, but on the other hand, if you look at this final three, I really think that if Sugar cared, she had a path to at least 3 votes. And the reason why is this. She's in there with someone from the other alliance, but the person from her alliance she's in there with, Susie, is the least respected person from her own alliance. If she's in there with Maddie, Maddie's getting all the Susie votes and maybe stealing some of the Bob votes. The people who are never going to vote for Sugar will go to Bob, but then everyone else is in play for her because all she has to do is beat Susie, except that once we get to Final Tribal, she has no interest in actually trying
I wouldn't just put that on Sugar, though. None of them had a very robust or proactive response to the jury.
No, none of them did. I'm not saying that any of them had good responses. But what I'm saying is that if you look at Sugar's answers, and especially the reaction to Sugar answers from certain people, especially Crystal, Kenny, and Maddie, they all basically came away from her answers like, what are you doing? Like, don't you? Because she was so dismissive of their questions that they couldn't even pretend that she cared.
So let's jump into Tribal Council talk, because, hey, before we even get to what happened in the Tribal Council, we have a final tribal with a woman of color, and an old. That's amazing. That never happens. I'm very glad, though, that we did not get our first ever tie, because we got so perilously close to doing it.
I think Jeff Probst would have just walked off the stage and quit at that point.
It would be cool to find out what happens if there's a tie. But is Gabon the season you want to use to find that out?
I have a theory about a tie, and I think I briefly mentioned this to you, but basically, I think the first tie will come in a season with a terrible final three. And I think the reason why is because with with good competitors in a final three, I think the jury's going to be much more proactive about, hashing out the exact differences, the exact strengths, the exact weaknesses, what you can attribute to one person. And then I think it tilts very strongly to one person when it does that. Whereas with a bad final three, everyone's flawed, and the flaws will resonate differently with different people. And there's just going to be different points of, I can't vote for this person because they did this. And so I really kind of think that a bad final three is where we will see the tie. I don't think it's going to happen in a good final three.
That makes sense because we got very close here. And then we also got very close in Nicaragua, which is also a bad final three.
I'm sorry, is that a season of Survivor? I'm not sure.
Not one you should watch.
Yeah. But then if you look at something like Cambodia, where we had, what we thought were a couple of very strong players in there, Jeremy wins going away. Because all of Spencer's strengths, Jeremy was better at them. All of Tassa's strengths, Jeremy was better at them. And so, the slight differences became really magnified.
Yeah, and you can easily see making a case for any of those three, but then once you get to them in front of the jury, you can see where all those votes came from. But Let's talk about where all the votes went here, because as you guys mentioned, Sugar completely submarines her own game in that final tribal to the point that she actually says, I don't know if you should vote for me to somebody. She calls Crystal a bully while answering Crystal's question. She tells Randy he's a jerk while answering his question. Not that it matters, but she flips off Corinne, which is appropriate given Corinne's question. She really seemed to have no interest in getting even one vote.
Right. And I think it was to Crystal that she said, look, if I wanted to win, I would have taken you to the end and that's how I would have won. And it's like, yeah! Because that basically admitted that she didn't want to win right there. And everyone's kind of like, what the hell is going on here? They don't know how to react to that. Because she's saying outright, I don't want to win. Because if I did, I would have done.
And at this point, I think it resonates with me why Jeff Probst would ponder quitting after this season. I mean, you had a woman that theoretically, when she got to the end, could have tried to own her game and been like, you know what? Yeah, I was emotional about it, but I did this and I did this and I did this, and you all are sitting over there and I'm sitting over here. And instead, she just decides, no, I'm good. I made final three and I've got no chance. I've just decided I'm not even going to try.
But consider that the winner of the season said, I don't think I outwitted or outplayed, but at least I outlasted. I would appreciate you tossing a vote my way. I mean, when you're faced with someone who doesn't care, I think he wins by default.
Everything about that final tribal was pretty horrendous. So speaking of horrendous, let's talk about Corinne. Corinne's question for Susie was kind of cute in a look at me, I'm trying to be mean kind of way. Even the sugar thing probably would have been fine if she stopped before she got to the dad thing. And then at that point, it's just like, really? I get that you got this persona that you want to project, and it rings so hollow, and it's so freaking terrible to do that to somebody that has lost their dad, regardless of what you think of the person. And I think it's pretty clear most of these people did not think highly of Sugar. It still crosses a line.
Yeah, I would agree. There was even the reaction the camera had of Marcus just wincing in pain, when she said that. And this is someone who then immediately afterwards stood up and just reamed out Susie and Sugar. So obviously he doesn't think highly of them, but even that person was just like, oh, I can't believe someone would say that. Though then of course he defends it in the reunion because these people really hated Sugar.
I did like how Sugar in the reunion did throw some shade at Corinne with, anyone with a heart would understand what I was going through about my dad. Like, okay, I see what you're doing there.
Not to mention the audience booed Corinne, so.
Yeah, and then she tried to do the wrestling villain thing, like, yeah, come on, boo me. We'll get to more reunion stuff in a minute, but we did get some very fun Randy at that final tribal council. He actually says, don't make me vote for Susie.
And the thing was, you could tell that if someone didn't say anything right there, he might have voted for Susie.
I can seriously see Randy's disdain for all these people, and he was like, you know what? I'll go vote for Susie right now. I don't care.
I'm really surprised he didn't just put down Jeff or something. Like, he really didn't want to vote for anybody.
And then the part where he walks over to the voting booth and yells out, "All three of you can kiss my ass." That was great.
Well, at least Crystal taught him something.
Right, and the best part was it flashed to Crystal, who's cracking up.
Yep.
You know, it become an in-joke.
So Marcus comes up there, as Matt mentioned, saddles Susie with the mom's burden in this game, which is such a terrible thing. I mean, why is it somehow worse for Susie to quote unquote not be a role model when Bob can do the exact same thing and he's fine? Not that I was so gung-ho on Marcus anyway, I thought he was fine, but really, that's just absurd. I hate when that happens. I mean, Dawn obviously got it much worse in Karamoan, but Marcus was very overt about it here.
Okay, I think I have an explanation for this. Marcus is Jack Shepherd, so he had an alcoholic father, and that's why he doesn't hold fathers to any standard.
The Lost crossover. Mark, what's your theory?
I like it. I approve. But, do we have a dog?
I don't think so, no.
All right, let's take a poll here. Which of these which of these final three gave the best answers to the jury's question? What do you think, Mark?
Honestly, and this is going to sound weird, but I think Susie did a pretty good job. Because at least she tried to come up with a rationale for her game. Sugar totally didn't care, and Bob was just kind of like, yeah, sure, I survived and I'm your friend, so give me some votes. So at least Susie was proactive about it, even if she didn't win.
I mean, I guess I agree. Susie, the way I read the game, Susie may have swung 3 votes from Sugar to herself, though Sugar may have swung 3 votes from Sugar to Susie. It's a little hard to tell when Sugar's doing her best Amanda Kimmel impression there.
We can spread the credit around there.
Yeah, whereas Bob didn't have to do anything to get 3 of the votes he got, and all he had to do was win Randy over, and Randy hates Sugar and thinks so low of Susie that he would say, "Don't make me vote for Susie." So that's really all Bob had to do.
Yeah, Susie probably wins by default because they're all so bad. Did you guys get the sense? It felt to me like at least half of the jury gave some version of, "Is that all you've got?" after asking their question and getting an answer back.
Yeah, I could tell they were pretty frustrated.
Yeah, and I think the final 3 was like, "Yep, that's all we got."
I felt the same way while watching it, by the way. Even Bob, one of his answers was, strategy-wise, I just rode coattails. And as Mark said, he basically just said, "I didn't outwit or outplay you, but I hope you give me a vote." I mean, I get if you're trying to go for a humility thing, but I don't think he was even being humble. I think that he was being sincere.
Yeah, I agree. It's only in like this final 3 that Bob could win.
He didn't even seem all that enthused about actually winning. I mean, we can get to that when we get to the reunion, but he said like 5 words in an hour.
Well, and so this kind of leads into a question that we got on Twitter from @KyleMcNevin. He said, "Would you agree that regardless of who won the final 3, they would be considered the weakest winner ever?" I mean, I've always thought Fabio was the worst winner I would ever see. Bob is pretty horrendous though. And honestly, either of the other 2 would have been just as bad, if not worse. I still kind of feel like Fabio is worse than any of these 3 though. But maybe it's just because I have such a disdain for Nicaragua as a whole.
Well, considering I haven't seen it.
Right. Neither of you have seen it. So.
Yeah, I haven't seen that. But for me, my worst winner is Jenna. I think, and the reason why I would say Jenna is because she tried to quit like 2 days before the end of the game. She gave away immunity at the Christie vote for no good reason, and it could have been her there. She was, she did the whole mean and arrogant thing to people outside of her alliance, and no one outside of her alliance actually liked her, and she rode a shorter immunity run to the end than Bob did. I mean, like how many did she win? I guess she won a couple earlier, so she may have won more than Bob in total. But, she at least tried to do something strategically at one point in the game. Not near the end, but earlier, whereas Bob never did. Like, I don't know. I think he's really in that very tight discussion for worst winners. And for me, he's either the worst or the second worst.
What about you, Mark?
I'd agree. I forgot how bad Jenna was, but you just reminded me, and I don't want to think about it anymore.
To me, this final three is like what happens when you manage to take out all the threats. And I mean all the threats before you get to the final tribal council, no matter how meager those threats might be.
Thanks, Kenny.
The closest parallel I had in my mind was Marquesas.
Yeah. I thought about Vecepia.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same sort of thing. It's, in Marquesas, you end up with Nalia and Vecepia at the end after plots take place to get rid of the big threats, and then, Kathy goes home and Pascal ends up going home via rock. I don't know that Pascal would have been a much more gratifying winner, or Nalia. So I think that by the time you get to the end, there were no real threats other than potentially Kathy. So it just felt to me like, okay, you don't have any threats left. Now somebody has to win because this is the point where we have to vote. And Bob won because he was there.
But the thing about this season, and I guess this is kind of a bit of an overview, but Gabon was just full of so many people like these final three. There were so many people in the season that you would think, oh, they can't win. Like this is not someone who's good enough to win Survivor. I mean, they're even, it's not like there was all these great players being knocked out pre-merge. All the people that got knocked out pre-merge were terrible at this game too. Like, I mean, it's just this season was just so full of people that were like the final three that it was so much more likely that you would have a final three full of people who couldn't play the game
right.
than like one of the three people who could would sneak through and get to the end.
All right, so let's move on to talking about the reunion, because I got the vibe watching this that this was the lowest energy reunion I've ever seen in this show. I don't know that it's the worst reunion, but at the very least, the lowest energy. What did you guys think?
Like I said before, Bob didn't say anything. They didn't really, they talked to Sugar, but they didn't really delve too deep into her thing. Susie was just kind of a non-entity. I don't know. I wouldn't say it was low energy, but it was low enthusiasm.
Bob, you said he didn't say anything. I mean, Probst got to the point that he went over and pretended to be answering for Bob because Bob wasn't saying anything. That's how low energy it was. Bob was damn near silent, and it was painful.
He wasn't even happy to win the sprint award.
No, I do agree. It was very low energy. I think just like probably the audience, I think all the players were just done with this season too. They're like, yep, we don't want to think about this anymore.
Yeah, did it strike you guys that the audience seemed quieter than normal?
I mean, because I think they just watched a season where they realized, like, man, Bob really did nothing, and he just won, and he was still probably the best option of that final three. Or maybe everyone was rooting for Sugar. It sounded like everyone in the audience was rooting for Sugar, so maybe they were like, oh, why didn't Sugar get any votes?
That's the impression I got, because it was very much of a pro-Sugar, anti-Corinne crowd, but no one else really gendered any enthusiasm from the crowd because they shouldn't have. So.
Yeah. Here's a crazy analysis. Was Sugar this, Gabon's Aubrey? Was she the one that the audience was rooting for? And then when she didn't win at the end, they're like, wait, how'd that happen? And everyone's just still stunned in the way that Emma has described, being stunned when Michelle won this past season.
That's the darkest timeline. I don't want to think about that.
Well, as a viewer, I mean, even if you weren't like an obsessive, edit reading, strategy loving viewer, what along the way would have made you think, oh, Sugar's gonna win this?
She got a lot of airtime, way more than anyone else, and, while we didn't like her, people in the audience really did. So I think she was striking a chord with a lot of people.
Like me.
I wonder if that was more of the Brenda effect, where Brenda was invisible in Caramoan. No one seemed to have an opinion about her, but suddenly, at the end, Dawn votes her out, and everybody's like, boo, Dawn, yay, Brenda!
I mean, Sugar was a big part of the season from episode 2. Like, she goes to the Sugar Shack, she has that big emotional journey looking for the clues, which Dan couldn't even find, talking about her dead dad and how this will save, you know, her relationship with him and how this is why she went on the show. So if she was an audience favorite, it wasn't just from the very end. She was definitely at least edited to be a favorite from early on.
I think what really the comparison I was drawing is just that because she got treated poorly by another contestant at the end, I think that's what kind of boosted her, or in the opinion of the audience. It's possible though. I mean, there was at least, and again, she's competing against a pretty poor cast here. So becoming the quote unquote hero of this group was probably not all that difficult. And frankly, I don't even have to put hero in quotes because just 3 seasons later, we'd find out that she was the hero of this season.
For, 40 minutes.
Hey, don't spoil the heroes versus villains watch, Mark. That's coming up at the beginning of July.
That's right.
Whoops.
Early plug. The one thing I said low energy as if this was the Jeb Bush of reunions, but Crystal seemed super energetic and really fun and totally willing to play and laugh about how pathetic she was at the challenges. Like, she actually seemed really endearing and enjoyable there. Did you guys get that same sense?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
But Crystal was always someone who was high energy. It's just that she would be really high energy and then wouldn't know what to do with it. So,
she's very high energy from the neck up.
Sure, yeah.
So yeah, I had a good opinion of Crystal. I mean, I mostly enjoyed Crystal during the season anyway, but just the fact that she seemed to take everything in stride at the end and laugh at herself, I found it endearing. One thing I did not really find endearing was when they went to talk to Corinne, and Corinne so desperately wants you to have an opinion about her, to the point that Probst even points out, oh no, you were coming up to me and saying why didn't you show me as a villain like Randy? Getting jealous that no reaction was elicited about her, because why would you have one right up until that final tribal question when you're finally oh, I get it, I don't like you.
Right. Well, you know why they didn't edit her like Randy? Because Randy is funny. And you could tell from the reunion when they are live and Corinne is flailing trying to get a reaction and can't, and Randy is deadpanning and you're cracking up.
Oh, and Probst hangs a lantern on it too. He's like, hey, Corinne, maybe don't go into stand-up comedy.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And this is what Corinne doesn't realize. She thinks being mean is funny. No. Being funny is funny. Corinne is not funny. She's not clever. She isn't even really shocking. She doesn't elicit reaction because she is just a non-entity who thinks that she's hot stuff. And frankly, I have no idea why they even thought she was entertaining enough to bring back, because she is not.
That's the one returnee I really question, of the 3 of them who've come back since.
Yeah, and we'll get into discussions about returnees from this season, but as we said, up until this episode, I didn't see anything that made me think, oh, there was some Corinne there that we missed that we need to see more of. I feel like I got the act, and now I get, having seen the final tribal, why they brought her back. Oh, here, this was a fun act, let's do this again, run it back so if we can get more of it. Fine, I understand. The thing is, and I think Probst was almost going to touch on this, if Corinne is the Randy, is it just that we don't like Corinne because we don't like when women do the, disgruntled old man act? I don't think that's it.
No. If she was doing the exact same thing that Randy was doing, I don't think there'd be an issue.
They seem to almost both be doing it for attention. Randy slightly less so, but Randy does it better. I feel like it comes more naturally to Randy, and for Corinne, it's just so much of an act.
I don't think that's an act at all for Randy. I mean, I think Randy is just this disgruntled old misanthropic man, except that he's witty. I actually had an uncle who was kind of like Randy. He would say horrible things, but you know what? He'd also say really funny things at times. And you would feel really guilty about laughing at them because, you remember this person, not a great person most of the time, and then he says something and you're cracking up. I mean, it's for some people, that's just their persona. And I don't think that's an act for Randy. For Corinne, this was an act.
Yeah, and I think, Courtney in China did the I'm such a bitch thing, but Courtney was really funny and charming, so it was, it's not even just that Corinne is a woman and can't get away with that, because Courtney's a woman, and she got away with that.
Right, exactly. And I think it's like kind of summed up by like Corinne's question to Bob, not even focusing on the worst part of Corinne's question and answer session with Susie and Sugar, but just to Bob. She's like, Bob, I want you to be mean. No, Bob, don't be nice, be mean. Like, no, she doesn't actually like people that are mean to, like, she likes when people are making fun of other people. And she wanted Bob to do that. And that's just what she is. She's a mean girl, but she isn't clever.
So let's talk about the person that is clever, because we did get, as you mentioned, the time with Randy, who brought a bunch of random Survivor fans to the finale, which I loved. That just fits his brand so well. I thought that was really cool.
I thought that was actually really awesome.
Yeah, I agree. That was a pretty cool stunt. Do we think they're Redditors? That's what I was wondering.
Oh, that's a good question. I think he was active on Sucks at the time, so I wouldn't be too surprised if that's the avenue that he found them.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think this might predate Reddit. I'm not sure though.
Yeah.
So that's where the Edgic spoilers came in.
Yeah, I have a feeling Randy wasn't passing around the spoilers, because Randy was probably like, I don't want to talk to you after this, but here's tickets to the finale.
I mean, the thing I took away from the whole Randy act at the finale is that he was still mad about the cookie. He was still mad about the cookie!
And you know what? That might have been put on. I'm not even sure that it was, but it was hilarious.
Because here's the thing, that may have decided the game. The cookie may have decided the game.
Yeah, because as Probst points out, Randy was the swing vote here.
Oh, God!
I have a serious question, though. If Randy made it to the loved ones visit, who would show up?
Oh, my God!
Oh, that's a great question. He's on Twitter right now. We should ask him.
Would it be his dog? I mean, he mentioned at the finale that the one person he loves is his dog.
Would it get clearance to go to Gabon?
Oh, that would have been amazing. Or they just sent out a local dog. Like, here, this is close enough to your dog. It's a dog.
That would be amazing. What if Randy specifically said, I don't want a loved one, and everyone's loved one comes out, and then, like, no one for Randy, and they're like, oh, Randy, where's your loved one? He's like, I don't want to bring anyone.
No, if he said, I don't have loved ones. Actually, the best Randy scenario might have been if they brought back the woman that he thought was flirting with him from the reward.
Yes! Like, that would have been the best scenario.
Yes. I mean, it's a toss-up between that and the random dog. That would have been right up there, 1-2.
There's our dog for the Lost analogy.
Yeah, there you go. There's the dog for the Lost. That's Vincent.
Tying it back. The one last thing I wanted to talk about was everyone's reactions to Sugar. Marcus very diplomatically basically says, yeah, Sugar's horrendous and nobody could stand being around her. But Matt, you had a very hot take you wanted to deliver about Sugar.
Okay, my hot take is this. Sugar is the female version of Russell Hantz.
Ooh.
Okay?
Ouch.
Yeah, well,
Harsh.
think about it. Everyone on the season hated her, but she ran the game. She found the idol. She had no shot at winning. The only difference is that she didn't cry and whine as much. Also, I guess she wasn't delusional enough to think that she could win at the end, when Russell, did. Even though I think she actually might have been able to win, it's just that she lost the second she thought she could not win. Whereas Russell lost just by being Russell. And, Sugar might have lost just by being Sugar. Yeah, that's my super hot take.
Nice. All right, let's move on to opinions of the season as a whole, because as I said earlier on, I tried to come into this, view it objectively, not let anybody's previous opinions influence me. I know that Andy in particular can't stand this season. A lot of people who read our site are not huge fans, but there are some people who I like that say that this is a fun season. So I tried to go into it. I'm going to form my own opinions. What did you guys think of the season? Mark, how about you?
I gotta say, it wasn't the best Survivor season, at least from a strategy standpoint, but it was a really, really entertaining reality television season. So I gotta give it points for that. I enjoyed it. I was entertained, and that's what we watch TV for, right?
So for you, is it going to come in the top half of Survivor seasons you've seen?
Oh, no. There's at least 20 seasons of actual strategy. This is just coming in the top of the bottom heap.
Okay, so you're putting it like maybe 25th-ish.
Upper 20s maybe.
You know, I think also I had heard that this is a season that while it's not great Survivor, it is funny. It's, you know, and I think Mark described it well as it's a season of reality TV and there's entertainment to be had there. You know, there are funny things in this season, even if most of the time I'm laughing at the cast and not with them. It was not, I expected this, having not seen Nicaragua, to be the worst season I've ever seen. It was not that. I think there are a few seasons I like, less than this one. It would probably be, I guess we've had 32 seasons now, right?
Yep.
So it would probably be around 28, right, 28, 29.
Yeah, and I mean, I came into it thinking, I heard the same things you had, which is that strategy-wise, this season was just a vacuum. And I think, our Twitter follower, XL Pelican, described it as terrible people who are also terrible at Survivor. And I don't know, I mean, the cast was really bad. The gameplay was really bad. But I didn't hate it. It didn't feel like Survivor. And I totally understand, and we'll get to it later, why people would view it differently watching in real time. I think it might have been colored by the fact that I came in with such low expectations, but I thought it was fine. It just wasn't good. I'm not like hurrying up to go rewatch this at any time soon.
Oh, God, no.
No.
I will say it is the best season of Survivor that they have filmed in Africa.
Ooh. Put it head to head against Africa. Do you think that this is worse? And I kind of feel like this is probably worse.
I really dislike Africa. I mean, I think I may have even ranked that as my least favorite season when we did the individual rankings a couple years ago, because I feel the setting, was so terrible. Africa did have like a good cast, but, you know, if you think about like what was good about the cast in Africa, it's that they made you laugh. I laughed in Gabon too. It's just that the people I laughed at and with in Africa were people I wanted to see back, whereas the times when I laughed in Gabon was stuff I would never want to see repeated.
Right.
So I think I may have liked Gabon better than Africa, but they're probably neck and neck for me.
Yeah, they're both pretty low.
Yeah, agreed.
All right. Let's move on to some audience questions here. Black Dynamite asks, would the tribe pick have worked better if it was more like Palau, where they had to spend time together before dividing up into tribes? Or did it really not matter? Matt, what do you think?
No! They got a second chance to pick and they still messed it up. Of course it wouldn't have mattered.
Yeah, that's the empirically correct answer, because we got to see what happened when they had time to spend together before they divided the tribes, and they were still bad at it.
They might have been even worse at it.
Yeah. I think this cast hated each other so much that it didn't really matter.
I don't even know that it's just them hating each other so much. I think it's just that none of their decisions ever seemed to make sense.
Well, so, you know, the thing about this season was that it was very, cliquish. You know, I think, you know, if you think about what the Onion alliance was, it was just like a high school clique. But the other side was also very cliquish, like GC and Crystal and Kenny, like those people were all very cliquish. And, you know, Maddie and Sugar, you know, turned out to be that way too. And so I think it was just people wanted to be with their own clique. It's just that, you know, when they had the chance to pick, there was one clique that was objectively terrible at challenges, and yet they stuck with their clique.
So this next question is going to be for almost entirely for you, Matt, because I know this is right up your alley. At Freddy Physical from Twitter says, please flesh out Dan the robot lawyer's time on Exile Island, looking for the idol. Really dig into how stupid he was here.
Okay, so first we gotta look at the clue, which says cross the lake. And Dan reads that and says, okay, I have to look within the lake. And this is a classic lawyer mistake, which is reading way too much and reading the wrong thing into words that mean something completely different. And so Dan spends the entire time looking on the bottom of the lake that the thing specifically says cross to before you even start looking. So, you know, and then what? He never crosses the lake. He never gets to the other side. He never finds like the giant like dug up pit that can only be described as a giant pit. Like,
and it's called a crater in the clue, and he's looking in things that are basically just a divot in the ground. Like if you hit it with a golf club and left a little divot, he's looking in there like, oh, is it in this crater?
Right, exactly. So again, this is a classic lawyer mistake of reading way too much into a very simple instruction.
I think the fact that Sugar tore through all 4 of those clues in, a very short amount of time, her first time on Exile Island, should just spell out exactly how bad Dan was at that. What was funny to me is watching it the first time, I didn't realize there were going to be more clues after that. I thought that in the crater was where the idol was, and that was going to be the big hunt. And he didn't even get to the crater, which was just where the next clue was.
I agree. I thought the same thing. I was like, oh my god, Dan, you couldn't even get to the crater. That's where the idol is. It's going to be really hard to find when it's in there. But no, that was just step 1. He did not complete step 1.
I'd love to see him assemble IKEA furniture.
He might fare better there because there's often just pictures instead of words.
That's true.
So Assistant Dragon Slayer wants to know, and man, what a troll. How did Edgic make it totally obvious that Bob was going to win this season right from the very first episode? Matt, as our resident Edgic expert.
I actually would really like to see Edgics from this season. I think someone shared one that had Kenny winning pretty much up until he got voted out, into which case there's then the giant question mark, and Bob? What was the reaction? Yeah, maybe Edgic had this one nailed the entire time because, Randy was spoiling it.
If there was the same online community at the time, when they did the Exile Island walk and they filmed Bob on the helicopter at the top of the mountain, if someone said like, hey guys, just so you know, Bob is definitely winning, did you see that shot? I'd have been like, oh crap. Yeah, Bob might be winning.
Yeah, I think I would agree. I think that'd be the moment when I would start actually looking at Bob as a possibility to win, and I would start closely analyzing him on that basis.
Yeah, that was a little too on the nose. Like, if someone used that as evidence, I'd have been like, oh crap, you might be right. Yeah, I can see it now.
But at that time though, I don't know. I still wasn't picking up on it.
No, because that was the very first, indication. One of the last?
That Bob had a personality?
Yeah, that there was anything to Bob except as a number.
Yeah, that's the thing, is there wasn't anything to pick up on about Bob before that. Alright, Violina23 wants to know, do you think knowing the winner in advance made this season more or less enjoyable to watch than it would have been if you were watching live and had no clue about the winner? Mark, what about you?
I don't know. I'm conflicted. Cause, as the Kenny and Sugar fan of the group, like, I would have totally been rooting for them and then kind of disappointed when Bob won. But I guess we all just went through that in the spring. So, it probably would have been very similar. And been like, what? How did they win?
Yeah, it may have made the season a little better. Just because I think I may have been, going in there with the knowledge, look, Bob wins, and as the season develops, he's obviously not playing much of a game, so who's he beating here? And so by the time that we had gotten to, the final, I guess, really 7 or 8, it was just a matter of, okay, so Bob's gonna beat some combination of Sugar, Susie, or Crystal. 2 of those 3 are gonna be in there, and yeah, that's how Bob wins. That makes sense.
Yeah. It's more like waiting to see how other people F up, and less like, how does he win the game?
Right, one thing I was really interested in going to this final episode was how does Maddie mess up? And I never suspected it was going to be a fire challenge. I really didn't. And actually, I think because Sugar told Bob that, look, I'm going to tie this up, and didn't tell Maddie that, Bob got a huge advantage for that, and that was, again, Sugar choosing, making a huge decision about the game rather than just, leaving it up to fate or whatever. This wasn't, Ozzy and Yule tying it up for, two people there. This was, one person tying up unexpectedly, and so one person got a chance to prepare and the other didn't.
Yeah, and for me, I think it probably did make the season more enjoyable, knowing that Bob was going to win, because I didn't have to have the same rooting interests. I wasn't going to be disappointed when anybody went home that I liked, which didn't really happen. I think it probably helped not having high expectations, at least for me. Similar question from Violina. She wants to know, do you think binge watching it over this course of 3 weeks made it more or less enjoyable than if you'd had to watch it in real time as it aired? I'll go first. I think it made it far more enjoyable, because I think if I was watching this from week to week, it would have been much more painful, especially not knowing the winner.
Yep, I agree, especially because then, I think I also would have just been, thinking aloud like, okay, well, how does this person win? Okay, well, geez, we're down to these people. I guess I hope this person wins. And, watching week to week, I probably would have been on board the Kenny train, and then I would have been thinking like, okay, well, Kenny's like kind of the last person I would actually want to win of this group. And I would have been thinking that he would be winning pretty much right up until the second to last episode.
Yeah, I agree. I have to chime in. And binging made it a lot better, but I'm curious how it would have played out week to week. Probably really frustratingly, just because there are some episodes where nothing happened, and I would have just been really bored, but I don't know. I liked it all at once. It's kind of like a Netflix show in that respect.
Yeah, there was just a lot of episodes where it was very predictable or nothing really happened. And yeah, watching this week to week, I can see why people like Andy are like, yeah, this is the second worst season. Binge watching, I think, helped this immensely.
So maybe what I should do from now on is just get spoiled on who the winner is, and it'll make the seasons better for me, because I won't have to have any sort of rooting interests. I can write these amazing Edgic predictions, and I'll be right every time. And then I can be like, didn't you see it in the edit? It was there the whole time. And, maybe that's the way I need to watch Survivor from now on.
I'm sure you'll have plenty of friends on our Survivor that will agree with you.
No, they all deny that they get spoilers.
Right, whereas Sucks brags about the fact they get spoilers.
Yeah, I just love giving our survivors some crap. Black Dynamite has another question for us. If you had to pick someone from this group that hasn't already returned, meaning Sugar, Randy, and Corinne, who have already returned, if you had to pick someone from this group to be in a future season, who would you pick? Also, would anyone from this cast excel on a different season? Let's start with anyone that we'd pick that hasn't already returned. Matt, who would you select?
Okay, I'm gonna go a little off the board here because, there's no way we could only get the version of Marcus that's just air guitaring. So, if we have to get the entire package, I'm not that interested. So I'm gonna say Crystal. At least I know exactly what I'm gonna get from Crystal, which is someone who is, terrible, but hilarious and will be active, in terms of personality. I think that's actually better than anything I would get from anyone else in this cast.
Well, if we do sign Marcus up for a reality show, we can put him on Lip Sync Battle. I'm sure he'll do great there.
Isn't that part of Drag Race?
True.
He should be on RuPaul's Drag Race is what you're saying. Got it. Loud and clear.
I'm sure he'd go great there. He's very attractive.
Charlie would probably love it. Charlie would be like, I'll be his consultant.
That would actually be really entertaining.
Yeah, I would probably watch that. All right, sorry for cutting you off, Mark. Go ahead.
That's alright. So as much as I'd like to see Kenny come back, just to kind of see how well his quote-unquote strategy would work in the season with, actual strategists, I kind of want to see Charlie play again. I kind of feel like he was a genuinely nice guy that just got screwed by being in a cast of horrible human beings.
And Marcus, the love of his life.
That too.
Yeah, Charlie is the one person who I think could come back and, do pretty well. I guess maybe Marcus could, but Charlie's someone who had some game, and I kind of feel like, the people who he kind of fell in with, were a bit of an anchor around him. He's someone who I think could have something we didn't see.
That's actually a good point, because I was gonna say that there wasn't really anybody from this cast that would necessarily do well on a different season, but Charlie might be the one. He's really likable. He just, like you said, got lumped in with a group and formed an alliance with a group that wasn't.
Right.
So when tower turned against them, he just had to fall because he was lumped in with them.
Right, but let's not pretend that, like, the Counter Alliance is full of likable people either, because
Oh yeah.
it really wasn't.
No. So I'll also concur with your selection of Crystal, because if I had to pick anybody, it would definitely be Crystal.
You just want to analyze her running form more.
Crystal actually has good running form. That's the one thing she's good at, except when it goes uphill. Yeah, I mean, at least I got some entertainment out of her. I feel like she would deliver the same thing again. She'd be horrendous at challenges, which is fun. I've got no problem with people being horrendous at challenges. Sandra's terrible at them too, and so is Cochran generally. But I like both of them on my TV screen, so, yeah, I'd pick Crystal, and then, like I said, Kenny to come back in a different season. I think he would have the best chance. I'm sorry, not Kenny to come back, Charlie to come back in a different season and have a good chance. I don't particularly want to see Charlie come back for a different season, but I think he would probably do well if he did. Mark, did you have a pick for who should come back in a different season and do well?
Ugh. No. I don't think any of them would actually do well. Except Charlie might get to the merge, and that's about it.
Oh, so repeating his same performance here then.
Yeah.
All right, next question. Barbara Anderson, longtime commenter. I think you all need to talk about the Fiji versus Gabon question. I feel like this is just for me because this is a comparison that I've made.
This is me too.
Yeah, also you. Okay, I called Fiji an interesting failure as I was watching it because it has some really low lows and they try a lot of different things, but it also has some really great high points, which made it fascinating to watch. It was bad, but it was fascinatingly bad. So she wonders why that same concept does not apply here. And she adds the qualifier, you cannot say that it was just casting that is the difference here. So, Matt, why don't you take the first crack at this?
Okay, so I think one of the reasons why Fiji's an interesting failure is because production's finger on the scale, like, it just looms so much. Yes, Gabon has 2 swaps, which is very much a production, like, getting itself involved thing. But Fiji had just the most unfair production decision for the entire pre-merge. And then they get to the merge, and they don't even have a swap, or like a second swap. They have just this random, merge challenge where only half the group goes to a vote, which is, it's kind of the same thing, but it's even more unfair, than the second swap. And so, Fiji, it's the interesting failure because it's a way to see all the ways that production can screw up a game, during the game. Whereas Gabon, you say I can't say casting, but Gabon was just kind of doomed from the start with this group. And the one saving grace of Fiji is that, Gabon is kind of just a very even keel of below average mediocrity that, sums up to less than its parts, whereas Fiji has very low lows, and then it has some really high highs, because guess what? There are people that I hated on Fiji more than I hated people on this season, but there are people that I liked a lot more on Fiji, more than I liked anyone on this season, and the people that I liked, they're the ones that won. And seeing them do so is pretty satisfying.
Yeah. Mark, have you seen Fiji as well, right?
I have, yeah. But you'll have to refresh my memory. It's been a while. I haven't seen it since it was live, so I don't remember any of the pre-merge stuff.
Well, the haves versus have-nots, as Matt said, really does submarine the whole, first half of the season, because you know who's going to lose every challenge. It's the tribe that's not eating versus the tribe that has a bed at their camp, and they've got just buttloads of food. They've got blankets and pillows and shelters and tarps and all this stuff. Yeah, that tribe's gonna win every time. And they do, and it's not remotely surprising.
Yeah, but at least that's fixable, like Gabon, if people are hating each other and not getting along and the swaps are going horrendously, you can't really fix that too much, no matter how many pick'ems you have. So I feel like Fiji was easier to do a course correction on, and they had better players. Like, I enjoyed Earl, I enjoyed Yowman, I enjoyed Dreams. I didn't mind the back half of it. You had the Edgardo blindside, you had the car thing, so that was a more interesting season. I wouldn't necessarily call it as a failure.
Right. Well, the other thing I will say about Fiji is that as bad as the pre-merge is, I actually think the post-merge is really entertaining. So it's just a tale of two seasons in my mind, where you have the worst pre-merge ever and then a solidly entertaining post-merge.
But was the pre-merge worse than Karamoan?
Yes. No. The Fiji pre-merge is the worst pre-merge ever. And yes, I am considering Karamoan, and I will argue this point if you really want me to.
I think I would probably agree with you, because Fiji's was such a fait accompli. You know what's going to happen. It's just a matter of, okay, who's next from that tribe to go home this week when they inevitably get voted out. Even the tribe swap thing doesn't matter, because whoever got swapped to the tribe that's in the crappy have-not camp, someone from there is going home. That you know it every week, and so it's totally predictable. The cast is not very good there for the most part, other than a few standouts. So it's a really, really bad pre-merge.
And then, of course, you have every week Jeff Probst is at his worst, because every week he's like, why aren't you trying harder to win? Isn't this getting old for you? And they're like, seriously, man, we have no food. This is your fault. And he's like not getting that. And and so his usual shtick is just even more annoying. And then you have Rocky, berating Anthony. And Jeff Probst is like, yeah, he's just doing it for yourself, Anthony. Why, he just wants you to be...
He's just trying to help you out, buddy.
Yeah, it's like, seriously? Come on now. So yeah, the pre-merge of that season's awful.
Yeah. Fiji is an interesting failure because they try a lot of things. Most of them are terrible ideas, and things work out very poorly when they try these things. But they're trying a lot of things. As you mentioned, they did a weird, team immunity challenge after the merge. They're all dumb ideas, but it's interesting to watch the dumb ideas play out. Here, the dumb ideas are mostly provided by the actual players, not production interfering to try things, although there was some of that too.
I was gonna say, there's still some of that same stuff.
The tribe swap thing was definitely some attempts at production interference. And even throwing the immunity idol into the merge feast was some production interference probably, but the stupidity of the players took care of the rest. Like Marcus tossing that idol into the ocean, the people picking their teams terribly, that was a failure brought on by the players and not just the show experimenting. So I guess I kind of sort of blamed it on casting, but not totally.
Yeah, no, I agree.
All right, so we covered Gabon here, and if you suffered through this season with us, we're about to cover one of the best seasons of all time, the best season if you trust our rankings. Andy and Emma are going to cover Heroes vs. Villains starting in the first week of July on our site, which is purplerockpodcast.com. They are going to do podcasts on blocks of episodes. The exact episodes they'll be covering each week are going to be posted on our site. So again, make sure you're checking out the site so you can know which episodes to watch by which dates. And I think Andy and Emma broke it down to themes for the different episodes so that you don't end up with a thread hanging from one episode to the next. So look forward to that. Please comment on our site about this season, and then also join us to talk about Heroes vs. Villains. Matt and Mark, thank you guys so much for enduring this season with me. I am finally a Survivor completist, having watched every season now.
Now that you're a completist, are you going to cry like sugar in joy?
I don't know about joy.
I'll be crying like sugar because I still have to watch Nicaragua, so.
Yeah.
That's true, yes. We did consider doing a Nicaragua watch, but it's just, you can't follow up Gabon with Nicaragua. It's just not fair to the people that read our site and follow along with us.
Yeah.
Or the people who have to watch it.
So instead, check back in another week or so and follow along with Heroes vs. Villains with us. Enjoy a really, really good season and come discuss it with us and hit the theme music.
That's what it's like when a woman wants a baby.